Hi everybody, this is Alanna. I am the Director of Marketing here at Bluefound Media, and I'm going to be doing the webinar today, talking to you guys a little bit about the future of search in 2013. Just before we get started, if you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to submit them in the GoToWebinar chat box, and we'll be answering those at the end of the presentation. So let's get started talking about some trends in the industry that are going to continue for the rest of 2013 that we think are really important for you to know about and be taking into account in your SEO and paid search strategies. So I want to start off by talking about social, because this is one of the most important changes that we've really seen become more recognized over the past year and continuing forward in 2013. And really, if there's something that you should take away from this presentation, it's that search loves social. And really, that's sort of a factor of how we've seen social signals be integrated more and more in estimating the value of content and the organic ranking of content. Maybe not officially as stated by the search engines, but what I've highlighted here is an industry survey done by SEO Moz, which is a software provider, a tool provider, and thought leader in the SEO industry. Great blog. If you don't read it, I highly recommend it. But they took a poll of some industry professionals to ask them which ranking factors they think are going to become more important moving forward in the next year, and which ones will become less important. So what you're looking at here in orange is the amount of respondents who said that the factor in question would become more important. Yellow is it will stay the same, and gray is that it would become less important. So you can see sort of in descending order the things that will be more important versus less important over the next year based on, you know, the opinions of people in the industry. And the reason that I've highlighted this obviously is because the two of the top three are actually social signals. So the first is social signals at a page level, and that would be shares, likes, tweets of content on a web page or of a page of your website. And the second is social signals at a domain level, so overall likes and shares of your website, for example, as opposed to just one page of your website. So I like to highlight this just because it's a really strong indicator that people who are in this industry and are involved in doing SEO on a day-to-day basis understand that social signals are becoming more important to determining the value of content. And there are a few very logical reasons that this is happening and that we see search engines taking social signals into account more and more. The first is that it's certainly considered a lot more trustworthy. So when I say more trustworthy, I mean than some other ways of evaluating content. So there are a few ways that search engines evaluate the keyword relevance of content, and that would be on-page factors like how many times a keyword is in the content of the page, in which areas of the page that keyword shows up, and then of course inbound links as well. And those things are not seen necessarily as trustworthy as social signals, because social signals aren't controlled by the webmaster or by the person doing the SEO of the site. So they're coming from a lot of different people, so it's seen as something that is less easily gamed, which is my second point here. So social likes and shares, there's certainly some manipulation that can happen. You know, you can be getting your friends to like your content, you can be creating fake accounts, but it's a lot harder to do that than to do some of the sort of spammy link building that used to be very easy to do and used to have a big effect on rankings. So social is more trusted as a result by search engines. And then finally, social can actually legitimize links. So there are a lot of different ways in which you could acquire a big volume of links quickly, but much of the time when that happens, it's because you're doing something that's not legitimate. So maybe you purchased 500 links and they all sort of came in at one time. Usually that's seen by search engines as highly inorganic and not trusted. But social is actually a way to figure out if something like that is being caused by legitimate popularity of content. So let's say, for example, that I had a Tumblr blog and it was based around something that happened at the Oscars, for example, to take a recent example. And it got very popular overnight, and I got 1,000 inbound links in 4 hours. That would usually look like I was doing something shady or spammy. But if I also got 500 likes of my Tumblr, 1,000 reblogs on Tumblr, and then 600 tweets of my content, suddenly the search engines are able to better understand what's going on there and to better estimate that my content is legitimate and that I haven't done anything shady, so to speak. So those are 3 key reasons that we think that search engines trust social are beginning to factor in social signals more and more. And so I just went over some of the reasons that social signals we think social signals have become more of a ranking factor, but social is also becoming more integrated in the search results themselves. So we're actually seeing social content show up in the way that we browse and the way that we interact with search engines themselves and the results that we're seeing. So the first example here is from Bing, who has a partnership with Facebook, where as a logged-in Facebook user, you'll see on a right sidebar how other people have interacted with the search term that you've searched for. So in the example here, I've searched for Star Wars. I'm able to see which of my friends like Star Wars. If any of my friends had written a review, I would be able to see that and interact with that content there on the right. And it's not, you can't see it in this example, but there's also sort of an indicator of which results on the search page itself have been shared by my friends on Facebook, had any of them shared it. So it's just a way of integrating the way that we interact with our social network into the way that we're searching on the web. So it's becoming a much more personal experience. And then this example is from Google, who obviously does not integrate Facebook results, but integrates results from their own social network, Google+. So for the same query, I'm seeing images shared by people in my Google+ circles at the bottom there, and I'm also seeing articles that were shared by people in my network showing up in the actual search engine result page itself. So that's, I've highlighted it here in green, but it's also denoted by this little, man icon that you can see to the left of the result. So this is just a way in which social content is actually showing up in our search results and making them a lot more personal to us as users. So that's social. Let's move on to talking about users and usability. And the real theme here is that making users happy is ultimately going to make Google happy with you as a website. So Google makes money by selling ads, obviously, but what they really need to achieve is to become, well, not to become because they already are, but to continue to provide the most relevant content to their users so that users keep coming back to Google to do searches. So obviously, the more volume they have using their search engine, the more they're able to sell advertising. So that's really just to say that obviously the end goal for Google is to provide the most relevant content possible and to make users feel really happy with the experience. And so there are a few things that I'm going to talk about. The first of which is having a strong content strategy. So content really is king. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but it's certainly true, and there's a reason that people say it. Having excellent content is going to become even more important as time goes on. So we'll talk about some algorithm updates that have happened in the next section of this presentation, but I wanted to highlight a few people who are doing content really well right now. The first is Amex. So this is their open forum. And the reason that I want to highlight this is because this is an entire microsite. It's not directly about promotion of American Express. Obviously, you know, it's branded as American Express and everybody knows that it's brought to you by American Express, but it's about providing a resource to people who, you know, would potentially be interested in American Express, especially from, you know, a small business perspective. So, of course, they offer business credit cards. So that's certainly the demographic that they're operating in. And what they've done really well, obviously, I think probably everybody on this webinar has heard of Open Forum. It's a well-respected content hub. But what they've done really well is that they talk about content and they present content that is actually useful to the users and interesting too. So, you know, it's not 5 reasons that you should have an Amex card. It's 5 dirty negotiation tactics and how to beat them. So this is content that people keep coming back to, that people share, genuinely share. You know, you don't have to force them to send this out to people. They want to engage with it, and they maybe know somebody who's not great at negotiation and they need a little help with this, and so they send that article along to that person or share it via their social network. So that's one example of somebody who's doing content marketing really well. The next is from Mint.com, and if you're not familiar, they provide a platform for sort of aggregating all of your financial data and you know, tracking it, creating budgets. You know, so it's sort of about financial health and knowing where your money goes and setting financial goals, etc. And so it's important to know that, because then you can really understand how this blog that they've created speaks really well to that audience, again, without being overly promotional of Mint itself. So it's, of course, it's all branded very well to fit with you know, sort of their brand standards and the tone of their overall content and website. But they're talking about things that are useful to their users. So somebody who uses Mint is serious about their finances and wants to reach certain goals that they've laid out for themselves from a financial perspective. So offering this sort of Foodies Friday blog series where they're talking about you know, ways to save money with regards to food is really useful information for their users. So and not only for their users, but for people who could potentially become users. So, you know, I wanted to talk about content and highlight some people who are doing it really well to show that I think a lot of people, a lot of websites have trouble getting away from the highly promotional content, and generally that doesn't work very well, and it's not very interesting to your users. So focusing on what you can offer that's valuable to potential users is where you should be headed in the future in order to you know, enhance whatever search and SEO efforts you have underway. So this kind of content is going to get shared, which is something that we just talked about, social signals. So that's definitely the direction that you want to make sure you're focusing on in the future. So next up we have usability in mobile. So a lot of us are aware of the trend of, the increase of mobile activations that are happening each year. So, of course, this is a trend that we expect to continue. Mobile devices and activations are going to become even more prevalent, and different sizes too. So, not only is there, an iPhone and an iPad, there's tons of different Android phones, Windows phones. They're all different sizes, and consumers are going to continue to buy these and access content even more frequently on these mobile devices and tablets. So the statistics that I've pulled out here are really important because 72% of consumers at this point actually expect a mobile-friendly site if they are browsing the web via a mobile device. And I can say for a fact that 72% of websites are definitely not mobile friendly. So there's a huge disconnect there. Brands and websites have been slow to pick up on this. And the next statistic is also really key because then 79% of searchers actually hit back if the site they land on delivers a bad experience. And if you can imagine, 72% of us are going to a website and expecting it to be mobile friendly and it's not, then we're going to hit back. And what I've highlighted down here is actually from within your Google account, you can block sites from appearing in your results. And there are certainly a lot of reasons that you might do that if it was a spammy site, but also if it just had really terrible usability and you didn't feel comfortable using it and you weren't able to find the information that you were looking for. And Google actually says here, those sites will only be blocked for you, but they may use that information to improve the ranking of search results overall. So this is a pretty strong signal that Google's thinking about content and usability especially. So if a site continues to get blocked by multiple different users, that's going to ultimately probably result in a penalty for you, so as the website. So focusing on making sure that your site delivers what your users were expecting and what they wanted is very, very important. So I want to talk a little bit about paid search, as we've been talking mostly about organic, and what types of changes and improvements and new targeting we can expect coming sort of down the line here. The first is more and more remarketing. So remarketing is not a new thing, and for those who aren't familiar with what remarketing is, as soon as I describe it, I'm sure you're going to be like, oh, that's happened to me a ton of times. But it's basically when you go to a website and you browse around and then you decide, oh, I don't want that product after all, or I don't need that service after all, and you leave the website, you go about your day, and then later on, maybe that same day, maybe a week later, you start seeing ads for that, either that company or the product that you specifically were looking at on the website. So those ads start sort of quote-unquote following you around the web. And that's because that website has collected a little cookie from you and has hit go on a remarketing campaign to show you ads either specifically for what you were looking at or for their website in general. And the idea here is that they're trying to get you to come back to the website to finish the conversion. And this is something that was sort of a newer thing over the past year, but is going to become more and more prevalent moving forward. So as more people learn what this is and start sort of employing these types of campaigns, it's actually right now it's a pretty cost-effective method of advertising. So it can be a big win for your company. So the next is the segmentation and improvement of mobile advertising. So having specific mobile campaigns that target the needs of your users who are searching, via a mobile device. Those needs are often different than the needs of a user who's sitting at a desktop. So if I search for dry cleaning from my phone, I'm maybe looking to find the hours of a dry cleaner nearby, one that's open late, so I might want to call them, and the ability to do that right from the ad itself is really useful. So having mobile campaigns that really effectively target the specific needs of a mobile user is going to allow you to be more profitable and more effective with those campaigns. And then finally, real-time bidding. This is something that that is in progress, and we expect to be happening for real sometime in the near future. But what real-time bidding is the ability for an advertiser to bid up a specific keyword, or bid up their ad for a specific keyword based on the search history of that user. So this is sort of complicated, but in order to make it easier to understand, I've highlighted an example here. So let's say that I have a friend, Lindsay, and she's done a search for the term SEO. Well, we don't really know what she means, what she's looking for when she searches SEO. Maybe she doesn't know what it is, and she just wants a definition. Maybe she's thinking about going to school for SEO, or she needs a job doing SEO. There are a lot of different intents that could be possible when somebody's searching that keyword. But let's say that then Lindsay, a day later searches for the term digital marketing agency. That, knowing that she's searched for SEO and then digital marketing agency, makes it a lot more likely that what Lindsay was actually looking for was somebody to do SEO for her. So as an advertiser in the future, we'd be able to bid up that keyword. So, we want to bid higher to show up in a better position for that keyword because we know that Lindsay is a more qualified visit, potentially, based on her search history. And then finally, enhanced results. So we're going to see more and more of this happening in the future. What the example here that I used is I searched for Lincoln, and I did this search a little bit of a while ago. So you're seeing movie times actually show up right there on the page because that was, at the time that I did this search, that was very relevant. I was maybe looking to see the movie and wanted to find out movie times near me. You're also seeing biographical information come up in the search engine result itself, so right there on the right-hand sidebar. But then what I really wanted to highlight from, all of those things actually do really affect websites and, web property owners, because if you were optimizing for, you wanted to show up for Abraham Lincoln for some reason, maybe sell Abraham Lincoln t-shirts, it's actually going to be a bit harder for you to do that because Google is integrating what it considers to be very relevant results, right there into the page itself. So it's actually pushing down the rest of the content. But what I also really wanted to highlight was the enhanced search results that you see on the third result down, Lincoln 2012 from IMDb. You can actually see star ratings coming in there. You see links to people in the movies, release date, etc. You can also see who's the director of the movie, who stars in the movie. And that's because IMDb is using what's called schema, or rich snippet data. So it's basically code on the page which tells search engines a little bit more about what the specific elements of the page are. So it's telling Google, hey, Steven Spielberg is a director. He directed this movie. And Daniel Day-Lewis starred in this movie. That's content and designations that search engines can't understand on their own because they are robots. But so by providing this By providing this enhanced markup, we can actually show enhanced results on the search engine pages, and there are a lot of different ways that are different designations. So you can do, location or an event, so it'll show up differently on the page itself. And the whole point of doing this is to make your result look a lot more enticing to users. So you can imagine that if I'm doing this search and I wanted to learn more about the movie Lincoln, IMDb looks like a really great result because it has these, stars, it has ratings, it's just it's a more engaging and visually captivating result on the page. So it can positively impact click-through on your results. All right, so next up we're going to talk about some algorithmic improvements that we've seen happen over the past year that are going to affect your efforts moving forward, specifically from an SEO perspective. So the first change that I want to talk about is Penguin, which happened in April of 2012. And really, Penguin targeted, sorry, I have this backwards. So Panda was the update that targeted thin content. So just, you can just swap those out there. So the Panda update, which did not happen in April, happened, there have been many iterations, a lot of which happened over 2012. But really what it did was it penalized web pages and domains that were hosting what is referred to as thin content. And the example that's often given is eHow. They definitely get a bit of a bad rap here, but that was because they did very often present content that was just not useful, but they ended up ranking really well for it because it was specifically optimized for like one very targeted term. The example that is often given is how to pour a glass of water. I couldn't find that one. I think that it's been taken down as a result, but I highlighted this result, how to make a jet engine. So this is a page on eHow about how to make a jet engine, which highlights the fact that you'll need a drill, an ignition system, and a clean garage in order to build your own jet engine. The reason that I picked this result is because I just have a hard time believing that somebody who searches for how to make a jet engine is going to get a ton of value from this page. There's content below the fold here that you can't see, but that's part of the point as well. So if you land on this page, you're seeing, other people are reading related ads. So I'm seeing like 4 or 5 ads happening and not actually being presented with any genuinely interesting content. And there's not very much useful content below the fold either. So this is an example of the type of thing that was targeted in the Panda update. And it's really important to think about how that affects you and what you want to do to not end up being lumped into that category. So a really strong content strategy is incredibly important. So planning out the content of your website before it's launched, or during a redesign, or even if you're not redesigning, just renewing your content strategy, thinking about what is the content that your users want to see and what can you offer them that's really valuable. So that includes useful product and service descriptions. So not having, really consider what your users need to understand about you and what you're offering them before they feel comfortable moving forward with it, as opposed to just sort of throwing up a loose description that you've always had. And in conjunction with building out better product and service descriptions, having reviews on your page can really help, especially for an e-commerce site where there are often issues of differentiating similar products. So, maybe you have a blue t-shirt and a white t-shirt and they look exactly the same. The only difference is that one is blue and one is white. So having reviews, let's say in this theoretical example that those are on 2 different pages as opposed to just a different color selector on 1 page, but having reviews of the t-shirt that are solicited from users can help build out the content on that page and make it a lot more useful to your users. And then having a blog with, again, like the example we talked about from Amex and Mint, with content that is not promotional but actually useful to users is part of a strong content strategy. And then, of course, we already touched on this a little bit, but strong usability. So a site that is easy to navigate and has a fun and engaging experience is also part of this, and that speaks to what I mentioned with the eHow example where there's 5 ads above the fold. Those types of things are not good for usability and they're not good for your users. So next up, Penguin, not Panda, which actually targeted spammy links. And I just highlighted a few examples here of what different ways that you can have spammy links. So one of the examples is paid links. Purchasing a link from somebody else is a big no-no. Reciprocal links, so me saying, hey friend, give me a link on your website and I'll give you a link on my website. That's also frowned upon. Farmed links, so there are websites out there that are what are called link farms, and they're specifically created just to be linking back to each other. So, it's this whole sort of network of links. Those are usually very low quality and not seen favorably by search engines. And then finally, directory links. This is not to say that there aren't useful directories. There are still some useful directories. And especially from a local perspective, being in some of those local directories is really, really important. The ones that I'm talking about here are the ones that are low quality, unrelated to what you do or what you offer, and having a link in there is really not going to help you. It's actually, after this update, this algorithm update, going to probably harm you. So moving forward, getting rid of those links altogether, so contacting the webmaster and asking for the link to be taken down, or doing what we call link remediation, where, well, that's getting the link taken down as part of link remediation, but there are a few other things that you can do, avenues that you can pursue if you aren't able to get the link taken down. But cleaning up your backlink profile so that it doesn't have a lot of these low-quality links is a strategy to focus on moving forward in order to, improve the way that your site is seen and interpreted. And then one final algorithm update that I wanted to highlight. This doesn't apply to a lot of people, but it speaks to the trend that I'm trying to demonstrate here, which is that Google is really cracking down on spam, or what it considers to be spam, by launching these updates. So it's really looking to make sure that the top quality results are showing up on page 1 for keywords. And part of this is the exact match domain algorithm update that was launched in, I think it was October of 2012. And basically it just says that exact match domain is no longer a ranking factor. So before, in the olden days, it could be easy to rank for a keyword just because you had it in your domain. So well, let's talk about the example I have here, which is bmicalculatormail.com. And they would rank for the keyword BMI calculator mail just because they had it as their top level domain. So bmicalculator.com is their domain, or mail.com is their domain, and they were ranking very easily for that keyword and related keywords. But this is actually the page that you come to. So imagine I did a search for that and I landed on this page. it's just filled with ads. I can't actually see the calculator above the fold. So I can see the first selector, which is male or female. But the calculator is down here at the bottom of the page. So I actually have to scroll down to see anything that I was looking for when I search for that keyword. So this is a really low quality site, and this is the type of thing that Google was targeting when they launched the exact match domain update. So all of those algorithmic improvements, as I sort of said before, really the trend here is getting rid of the results that were only ranking because they had gamed the system, really. And so trying to populate the search results with high quality content. And that's something that every website should be focusing on moving forward, is making sure that you aren't doing anything that can be seen as, you know, black or gray hat in the future, so that everything you're doing is trying to meet the needs of your users. That's really the strongest and most future-proof strategy. So that's all from my presentation side of things. I thank everybody for listening and tuning in, and we can do some questions now. So. Okay, so the first question here is, when you say social legitimizes links, does that only come into play when you have a sudden burst of links, or is it still important for legitimacy if you gradually and slowly build links? That's a really great question. It works both ways. So it's certainly good from the perspective, like the example that I gave, where you're going quote unquote viral. But if a lot of people are linking to your content, we would expect that a fair amount of people would also be sharing it via Facebook or you know, Twitter, whatever. So having some sort of social signals, maybe not as many as inbound links, is still seen to work together. So those two things should go hand in hand, and you know, search engines want to see that they are both happening. Should we have social media links per page in our website? So I think if I'm interpreting this question right, you're asking, you know, should we have people sharing a page? So the answer is yes. It is good to have. We saw in that example, we saw you know, social signals at a page level and at a domain level. So it's important to have. I mean, it can be good and beneficial to you to have shares and likes of a specific page, so, or of a blog post, for example. So yes, it's great to have that as well. What does excellent, quote unquote, excellent content mean? What makes some content better than others? Okay, so excellent content, that's a good question, is well written and high quality. Again, I know that's like a little bit vague, but the point is here that it's, what I can't emphasize enough is that it's genuinely useful to users. So it's something that you would want to read. You know, it's not just put out there for the purpose of ranking. So it's not stuffed with keywords. It's legitimately answering a question or addressing a topic, discussing something. So it's you know, it doesn't have to be genuinely interesting to everybody. It just has to be genuinely interesting to people who are in your industry, or you know, in the sort of field that you operate in. Is remarketing bad for a brand or considered shady? So it's definitely not bad for your brand unless you're mismanaging it. So you do want to be careful to limit the amount of times that your ad is being shown to people. And so you can put sort of a time frame. Show this ad 3 times before letting the ad expire. So you can set a limit of how many times you want the ad to show or how long, what the time frame is, and that can limit some of that sort of feeling of uncomfortable that people get when they might see your ad. And the other thing that I really want to note is that it's also really important to have text about that in your privacy policy so that you are collecting cookies for the purpose of potentially showing ads later. Who supplied Lincoln snippets, IMDb or does Google just pull them up? Great question. You as a website have to put code specifically on the site to to have those snippets show up. So it's very simple to implement, and you're just saying, okay, in the specific language, but you're saying, okay, this is a director, this is an author or something like that. So you do have to do it on your side, and then Google shows them. But it's not for sure that they're going to show every single snippet that you define. It's sort of at their discretion, but you do have to be the one to initially put the code. I still see many sites that rank well with exact match top-level domains. To what extent is this blocked? Is it just spammy sites? That's a great question. It's certainly not every single site. So there are exact match domain sites that are really useful and that actually meet the needs of the users. This update was specifically targeted at content and websites that were coasting only on the exact match domain that they had, as opposed to having that be part of what they were doing. So it is focused on spammy sites, and so that's not to say that everyone with an exact match domain is going to be totally out of luck moving forward, but it wouldn't be something that I would consider a strong strategy for a new site. So don't let that be an influencing factor if you're picking a new domain. Are reciprocal links frowned upon if they are for your target audience and relevant? So I'm not 100% sure if this question is about whether or not it's okay to give links out to other websites that are relevant to your users that they might be interested in. I would just say that never exchange a link for the purpose of exchanging a link. So if you want to link to your friend's blog because you think it's genuinely interesting and you think that your users will think so too, go for it. That's fine. But don't set up these sort of relationships where I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Those are generally going to get you in trouble. My website is more blog-based, a geek pop culture site, and I'm having a hard time reaching beyond my inner circles. What advice could you suggest for a more blog content site? That's a really interesting question. It sounds like you're having a hard time sort of drumming up some traffic. What I would suggest is spending some time listening to people in that general area and industry and think about what content they sound like maybe they need or they want, or what are your competitors doing really well at this point that's getting them more traffic than you and getting them more attention than you. So is their content addressing a need in the community that you've overlooked? I would spend a lot of time looking at both competitors and also doing some research on social media with what that general audience is really engaged with, and then try to mimic that in your site or try to carve out a specific niche for yourself on that site. Okay, can we find out through Google Analytics how many blocks there are against your site? Not through Google Analytics. I don't want to say for sure because I'm not 100% on this, but I do think that this is something that you might receive a notification in Webmaster Tools if it happened a lot. I don't think that it would be possible to find out specifically how many, and this is something that's not a huge focus right now. So it used to be actually that you would be able to block things right from the results page. Now you actually have to go into your account and block results. So I don't think that, unless you were doing something really bad, or unless your site is really low quality, that you would have many blocks. And so I wouldn't be too worried about it unless you got a notification in Google Webmaster Tools. Okay, so I think that's all the questions that we have for now. Yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining. This was really fun for me, and I hope that you learned a lot and that you'll join us for our next webinar.